Hi everyone, Hyoka here, back in the corner of my room, and I know it's been a while since I last posted a video. There's just been a lot going on in life, but with Dallas Regionals concluded and my success piloting WinRye at that event, I figure now's as good of a time as ever to talk about where Rye is in the meta and ask the question, is Rye back? So I hope you guys enjoy some Rye discussions since pretty much the only one talking or playing Rye. Well, I shouldn't say the only one because this past weekend, three Ryes topped in regionals, and I don't know if just everyone was on the same wavelength that weekend, but it was nice to see. And it's not like it was coordinated with it or anything. We all kind of did our own thing and happened to have similar ideas. So without further ado, let's kind of talk about what the meta was like pre-Rile ban. In the pre-Rile ban meta, there's actually a decent amount of level 3 decks, which is what Rile wants to see. You've got Crux, Shadow Strike Tristan, Luxem Xander, Umbra Guardian, and the Dragon. And you would think with this amount of level 3 decks out there that Rile might have a place. But you're actually wrong, and that Rye actually faces a double gaping from this polarized meta, where you've got the aggressive decks, they've got fiery interference to hit the healing. They've got Censor in case you're also running Rile, and they've got really fast burn spells to try to take down the Rile decks before they start to get going. And then you've got the Rile decks with the Rile package, giving them additional influence, digging more cards into their deck to be able to find their win condition. And because of all that influence, the moment they hit level 3, they can pop off much faster. They'll be able to play their insoles right away. The Luxem decks will be able to have like 3-4 Luxem cards in their hand. And while doing that, they're holding those extra interaction cards like Incapacitate, a null spell. Like you've got Lorraine's paying 4 cost for Incapacitate because they just have that much influence. And Rydex can't really keep up with that because even though Rydex can run a Rile package, they can't run a full Rile package. So what does that mean? That means Rye needs to run a Glimpse Spirit to be able to find the pieces of the Rile package because they typically only run Creative Shock, Rile the Abyss, Liminal Guides, and Undying Dreams. There's not really much room to fit additional Spectre cards, to fit the Reduce to Ash, to hit the Censors, or fit cards like Cremation Ritual and Hasty Messenger. As a result, that Rile package is less consistent for you, but you still kind of need it just to be able to keep up with the level 3 decks. So if you can't beat the level 3 decks, or maybe you're more just on par with them, and you're still losing to the aggro decks, the deck is basically dog water. And although you can take games by high rolling off Rile in a long drawn out series through like a regionals or an ascent, the deck just isn't consistent enough to perform. Now, if we talk about post-Rile ban meta, the picture is actually pretty similar to pre-Rile ban in that you still see the Crux decks. You still see the Shadow Strike, Umbra Guardian decks. However, they play a much more fair game plan, and they're more dedicated on attacking or defending against the aggro decks than they are trying to fight amongst themselves in an influence war. So what this means is, without Rile, they can't dig as far into their deck as they normally would. They have less influence than they normally would. The board presence is a bit less because Liminal Guide popping off is not as common. And they have to run a few more passive cards if they want to keep that influence package of, instead of Rile, they'll revert back to Cremation Ritual, which will mean that they're probably putting in Stalwart Shieldmate and Library Witch, which is a bit more passive, giving Rye more breathing room in the early game against level 3 decks, while also being able to outpace them in the late game. Fortunately for Rye, these level 3 decks because of adding these, whether it's Fluffy Shopkeep or these other intercepts and taunt cards, it also keeps the aggro decks at bay. And as Rai, you especially like to see Crux near the top because that means more flame sweeps to be able to clear out the ally decks, and you're pretty much okay with matching up against any level 3 decks. In my opinion, Rai is at worst 50-50 against any level 3 decks. Now, the aggressive decks have kind of changed in nature as well. Fire aggro is always going to be there. It's always going to be a tough matchup for Rai, but you're also starting to see more water allies, Aetherwing decks, and restand decks. And these decks are quite scary in terms of the amount of burst damage they can deal to Rai. But right now, the dynamic is like the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And we want to see level 3 decks kind of working to control these aggressive decks so then we can dodge them and thrive. And the meta is still quite young. A lot of the decks carrying over from pre-Rile is basically adapted to fit post-Rile. And it may not necessarily be the best deck choice or the best deck construction when all is said and done. But currently, there is a spot for Rai in the meta, and ultimately why I always kind of end up choosing Rai in these big events because it's like a personal challenge to me on making the deck work. But I felt a lot more confident into post-Rile ban meta than I was pre-Rile ban. Now let's go into what I brought for regionals and kind of explain the Win-Rai deck a bit. Going into Dallas regionals, I really wasn't feeling 100%. I had, just a long past 1 or 2 months of work, and the last thing I wanted to do was spend another 7+ hours grinding through a GA event. And I wasn't exactly having the most fun during the Rile meta. So although I felt the deck can perform and I felt that it was quite strong, I just wasn't really into it. Until I saw that Josh H at the New Zealand regional also topped with Win-Rai, and that kind of lit a fire under me. And we pretty much have a very similar deck in the main board outside of a 1-card difference. So why did I choose Win-Rai in the end? Well, with Fluffy Shopkeep and Arcane Elemental, those two work together to be able to bring another dimension into Rai's arsenal. I mean, before Rai, on the fire build, they were solely focused on spell-based damage. So facing, one type of damage, the opponent can better prepare countermeasures against it. They can side out cards like Resolute Stand because they know it's useless against Rai and kind of pile into non-attack damage defense. But when you mix in Arcane Elemental with Arcane Blast, you're attacking from both sides of the spectrum, and they can't really side out Resolute when they would normally want to do that. So it keeps them on their toes, and they might not know, well, should I materialize Safeguard Amulet? Should I materialize Tariff Ring? And even if I materialize Tariff Ring, is now a good time to pop it? Do they even have the combo in hand? And it's really difficult to assess how to defend against Rai. And also, this deck naturally provides more defense than fire. You've got 3 visits that provide some healing. Fluffy Shopkeep being a 1/3 with intercept that goes card neutral. You basically don't have to run Resolute Stand. Well, at least I didn't feel like I have to run Resolute Stand just based on what I saw on the meta statistics, what I felt people were going to bring in the local meta. But you could easily adapt this build to be a slightly more defensive as well if aggro starts to pick up a bit. Now I'll go over the list briefly, starting with the material deck. I'm not going to cover every single card, but I'll cover a few key cards and why I made the decisions that I did. So first, I chose Tome of Knowledge over Tome of Sorcery because in fire builds, you generally run more arcane spell cards, but here you're a bit more lean. You're only running 20 arcane spell cards. So you want that guarantee of hitting a level 8, and Tome of Knowledge giving a permanent level does help assist with that. And because it gets absorbed by Tome of Sacred Lightning, and you can banish Tome of Sacred Lightning to draw a card as a result, Tome of Sacred Lightning can hit the banishment, fueling Arcane Elemental in some routes where you don't see Fluffy Shopkeep. Furthermore, you have Arcanist Prism and Storm Tyrant's Eye that can feed Arcane Elemental through Fluffy Shopkeep. And those are the two Arcane Regalias that you'll first pitch using Fluffy Shopkeep in order to get the card draw. Fluffy Shopkeep is the card that is gluing this deck together. Not only is it a 1/3 intercept that provides some defense, it goes card neutral if you pitch 2 Regalias, and the 2 Regalias that you pitch help fuel Arcane Elemental. So this card makes the whole deck work. In the past with Windrise, I would just go down the Advent route because I felt that is a quicker kill condition than having to set up Arcane Elemental. But with Fluffy Shopkeep, Arcane Elemental and Arcane Blast pretty much go online at the same time. And so that threat of, am I facing spell damage? Am I facing attack damage? Really puts the opponent on their toes. Next, you've got Rictus Tiding. Now, this card, you can get a +1 advantage if the 2 cards that you reveal is 8 cost, and you've got some combinations that can hit that. You've got the 3 and 5 combination between Fluffy Shopkeep, Dungeon Guide, and Disorienting Winds costing 5. You've got the 1/7 combination with Scry the Skies, Shattering Discharge, and Arcane Elemental. And then you've got the 0/8 combination with Careful Studies, Arcane Sight, and 3 Visits. And it's not always random because you've got cards like Scout the Land to look at the top 4 cards of the deck. In the late game, you've got Big Scries. And you also have 3 Visits, which once in a while you do see the combination for Rictus Tiding to +1. Even without the +1 effect, Rictus Tiding is good because it's fast speed. It can dig cards. It can dig deeper into the deck to find Dungeon Guide, for example, and it can be easily played as a 2 cost even in the late game because it's fast speed. So if you need to dig cards further to find your arcane cards, maybe to find a Scry or a Careful Studies, Rictus Tiding can also do that without being a burden in the late game. Next, you've got the combo of Disorienting Winds, Summon Gale, and Arcane Elemental. It's pretty self-explanatory. Your goal is to try to play Arcane Elemental for free, pick it back up with Disorienting Winds or Summon Gale, and replay it again for repeated 7 attack damage. Now, Disorienting Winds is slow, but it draws a card, which can dig further down to your combo. And then you've got Summon Gale, which is fast speed. So if they interact with Arcane Elemental at all, say that they fireball to try to kill it, well, you can pick it back up again with Summon Gale at fast speed. Lastly, you've got the traditional Rile arcane cards like Arcane Blast, Erratic Bolt, Shattering Discharge. I'm not going to elaborate too much about it, but this provides the spell damage core where sometimes you'll scry into the spell damage side, sometimes you'll scry into the attack damage side, and sometimes it'll be a combination of both that will finish off the opponent. Lastly, I want to touch a bit on my sideboard. You might have noticed in my main deck, I'm not packing any defense at all because I expected to face a lot of level 3 decks, and I basically have my smorgasbord of what defense do I want to side into based on the aggressive decks that I might potentially face. So Blanche is good gives you some options into Fractals. You've got Crystallized Destiny for some of those big reswing decks, maybe some big Rending Flames or Dragon hits. You've got Resolute Stand for the ally builds. You got Shangjiao for the burn decks. You got Ravaging Tempest for the Shinju decks. And I also packed Stifling Trap for Snow White, or in level 3 decks running Dungeon Guide, an extra Stifling Trap doesn't hurt to slow them down. But mainly I want to be able to hit Snow White because Snow White prevents you from leveling up with its on enter effect. And you really can't spend too much time on the lower levels when facing against water allies. So packing Stifling Trap as a way to remove it is beneficial, and you could summon Gale Snow White as well, but they'll just replay it the subsequent turn. So I'd rather have permanent removal if possible. Now let's go over some of the matchups that I faced during my regional run. So you can see I finished with 5-1-1, and as expected, I faced against a lot of level 3 decks. I played 7 rounds, and only 2 of my opponents didn't run a level 3 champion. And this type of ratio was what I was hoping for when I constructed the deck the way that I did. I'm going to go through some of these rounds briefly and kind of commentate on the matchups. So Water Umbra Seal, I believe Cabin put a video out there with Water Umbra Seal, and there was quite a few of it at Dallas Regionals. And the deck is quite passive, so for Rile that wants to set up a quick win condition, it's fairly easy of a matchup, and they don't really have too much interaction to stop those big swings. Round 2, I faced against a local who knows me well, knows that I play Rile, and he plays a Water Unique Allies list. And I kid you not, very first game, he goes first, he plays Nia, and calls Rile. I'm like, dude, I haven't even played anything yet, man. So I already knew I was in for a ride. I mean, it's not exactly a great matchup, but fortunately, I did see my dungeon guides, and when I hit level 3, I had 2 careful studies, scry, and I was able to set up lethal relatively quickly because both times I was 1 turn away from death, and I pretty much had to go for it because I knew I couldn't give them another turn. So I would say it's quite fortunate that I had everything that I need going into level 3, and I barely squeaked by round 2. And then I faced against Fire Crux Merlin. I'll just comment as a whole because there was 3 Fire Crux Merlin on my list. In general, this is a very favorable matchup, but if you don't see the interaction that you need, for example, if I just had, I think, a spell shield in each of the games that I lost in the series, I would have been just fine. However, sometimes you just don't see what you need, and but overall, in the other 2 games of both series, I did see what I need, and I won those games quite handedly. In round 4, I faced against Rile of all things, which is quite shocking at 3-0, and I haven't faced another Rile at a major event since like Vietnam. It's quite unbelievable, and his build was also Arcane Elemental based, but I believe he was running an Advent package, and I think having the extra Arcane cards made him a bit too slow in game 1, and then after I had all those extra sideboard options, I just kind of stalled out his lethal attempt and managed to take it in 2. Lastly, you have Water Aetherwing Diana, and this is quite a tough matchup. I knew the deck was out there. I just didn't think I would see that many of it, so I didn't prep for it as much. But the deck is really scary because your shields can get poked by Charge the Soul, and they can have those big attack swings fairly quickly with Cheshire Cat and Ranger Strides. So something to keep an eye out for as this gains more popularity along with the restand deck. overall, I'm pretty happy with my performance and the performance of the deck. I do think in the current state that Rai does have a place in the meta, but you're starting to see an uptick in the Aetherwing Diana decks, the restand. I'm also starting to see more Genbu out there as well. I think Fractals is also picking up the seeing more usage. So to be determined if a favorable meta for Rai continues. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video on just kind of discussing Rai, rambling about Rai and my experiences playing this Wind Rai build. I'm certainly not taking credit for this build at all. I mean, it's always kind of been around. And with Rile Ban and Fluffy Shopkeep, everything just kind of came together for it to shine. And looking forward to evolving the deck and maybe exploring a bit more with fire. And if I attend any other major events or come up with anything interesting, I look forward to sharing them in the next video. Thank you and see y'all soon.